5 minutes. Oops. Hi everybody, welcome to StashBlaster Quilts. My name is Maria and I'm here to help you make more quilts in less time with less stress. I am a professional organizer by trade, so we will be starting with a tip, then we're going to talk about what's going on. It's been a very weird couple of weeks, so it's quite likely that we'll be ending a little early today, but it all depends on what questions or comments are in the chat and just how verbose I am as we get going. So the tip is actually related to a recent one that I did. I talked about building time into your calendar for things that have just gone completely haywire so that you're not as much under stress all the time. And one of you wrote back to me and asked me, how much time do I build in? And that's a really tough question. And of course, it hasn't worked this year with everything that's going on, and I'll explain that in a second. But I generally add 20%, which seems like a lot. But most of us tend to underestimate how long something will take. And I also know that I have to do a lot of changing back and forth. So for example, I never have a client's quilts up here in my sewing room on my design walls or anything for these live streams. So that means I have to add in extra time to take them down in a way that makes sense, which might mean I have to do some additional labeling or numbering so that it's not a big pain to put it all back up. So things like that, I build in that extra time. Now, if I don't use it all, I have other tasks that are on my 5-minute list, 10-minute list, that kind of thing, where it's something I can just go ahead and pump out a couple of little things. Hey, Judy. So that's why I do it by 20%. Now, what do you do when something happens to you like happened to me this year with Scott getting his cancer diagnosis? Well, once we had that diagnosis and we knew what his schedule was going to be like, and since I have had family members with cancer in my past, I knew how much of a time suck that was going to be. So I did go out to my custom clients and said, okay, look, what is your real time frame for these things? Is it something that can be put off until June? Is it something that doesn't have an immediate deadline? Is this for a wedding? Do I need to find someone else to do this for you? Luckily, none of my clients had anything with a really short deadline. The only 2 that did have them, I was far enough in advance that I completed in plenty of time, even with my restrictions that I have going right now. So there are people who had hoped to have quilts by now that I haven't started yet. But I did talk to them about it, and I told them I would give them a heads up, and they're perfectly fine. There's at least one person who wants a quilt done to celebrate her husband's retirement, and so she knew how she was and how busy I was, so she gave it a year to do it. So I still have 6 months to go ahead and finish it, and I was able to do some designing and get some of the initial work done between now and then, so it's all working out. But by attacking the problem early and talking to the people involved, I built in additional time so that I would have a realistic answer for them. So when you are building your calendar and you're making your plans, 20% is not an unreasonable amount of time. Now, it might depend on what the task is. So, for example, if you're planning on how long it's going to take you to pack for a trip, probably 20% is a high extra to plug in there, especially if there's things you can pack in advance to make it even faster to do at the end. Having things like lists speed things up. So you may find that you wind up with some extra time, but it's better to have too much than too little. So that's my answer for the tip for this week. It's basically make sure that you build in probably more time than you think you'll need, but then have a list of tasks that don't take much time that can help you get ahead for the next thing. So I hope that all makes sense. Right now, things have been odd. If this is your first time here, I apologize, but you're going to get caught up along with everybody else. 2 weeks ago, I had my live stream on Wednesday night, and Thursday morning at 5 a.m. I hit the road. So Scott was supposed to have put up this block of the month that we're doing, and he got confused and then forgot, and so he only just got it up like yesterday. So I apologize to those of you who've been waiting for that. It is up now, and it's the same technique we did on the last one, except for the triangles are different sizes. It's the same technique. So, one other thing, because the original was a diamond all one color, all I did was I sewed the strips together that make this diamond here in the light and this one here in the dark. I sewed them, I cut out the diamond, and then I treated them exactly the same. So this should not be a particularly serious step up, because really the only difference is going from a solid diamond to a half diamond, or also known as a triangle. So that's what's going on with that. So I apologize that it wasn't up. It was supposed to have gone up on Thursday, 2 weeks ago, but stuff happens. Um, so that's what's going on with that. I am going to be here until August. August is the next convention I'm going to. So that'll give me a chance to get ahead, and then we'll, potentially have that whole posting things later, or me doing a remote uh, live stream or something. But I'm not going to worry about that till August. Some good news. Scott's pet came back clean, and when we talked to the oncologist on Monday, they said he's in remission. So we need to monitor every 3 months for the first year, and then it's going to spread out. But for the next 5 years, we're just basically going to be looking at it. So as soon as he gets his energy back, which is extremely low right now, then he'll be able to start picking up some of the tasks that I've been doing of his. Because what you may not know is that he works for me at my organizing company and writing and all of that stuff, all my business stuff, full-time. So I'm doing my full-time job, his full-time job. I'm doing all of the housework. So it's not leaving a whole lot of extra time and space. And so he's got some anemia now, and he's exhausted a lot. So it's going to take him some time to rebuild, just like rebuilding his immune system. But we're still really, really happy with the results. It was basically 6 months from diagnosis to remission, 6.5 months. And life can start going closer back to normal soon, I hope. It'll all be based on his energy level. But with the doctor's permission, we did sneak out, and we saw Inside Out 2 this week at the theater. We made sure to pick the middle of the day when there weren't going to be a lot of kids, and we picked seats that were away from everybody, and we were masked. But all in all, we saw the movie in a theater like real people, and that was pretty cool. So that was kind of our celebration for his results. So I was just on my trip to Omaha, and I had a wonderful time. It took me basically 3 full days to drive out there at about 9 hours a day. So it went fine. I got out there, I sold a bunch of books, I taught my class, I talked to a lot of people, and I drove back. It wasn't, while I was there, since I actually got there a little bit earlier than expected, because I had planned for 3.5 days of driving. I met a friend of mine who lives in Omaha, and she took me to the Omaha Zoo, an aquarium, and I bought something I've never bought for myself before. I'm sure this is going to look so stupid, but I bought my very first bucket hat. I know, it looks so stupid. It has like sharks and stuff all over it, and the sides do snap up, so I can snap it up like this, which just makes it look dumber. But I figured I do have some of those cooling scarves, so having the bucket hat that you can actually soak and stay a little bit cooler will be good for like when I'm driving to Indianapolis in August. So, but it was very cool, and it has the Omaha's Henry Dorley Zoo and Aquarium on the front. I was told by multiple people, actually, that Omaha has the best zoo in the country. I've heard of the San Diego Zoo. We made it to the safari park in San Diego, but not to the actual zoo. But this is a really good zoo. I thought that they were kidding, but no, it is a really good zoo. One of my favorite parts was the Skyfari, which is basically like a ski lift that goes over the habitats that the animals are in. So you can look down and see the giraffe and zebra and all kinds of other animals. The only thing I disliked about that is that there's no commentary. So you don't necessarily know what you're looking at. But it's a nice view, and then when you're walking around and you see it, you can be like, oh, that's what that thing was. So overall it is good. But they have like a zillion different habitats. They have a desert dome, and then underneath that are the creatures of the night, and so that's where the alligators and the bats and that kind of stuff was, nocturnal snakes, things like that. So it was a very cool day. We spent about 4.5 hours there. And then we had to get back because my friend Tony, that I was doing this with, was singing in a chorus that night. So I get back to the hotel, I got changed, and then I went and saw her perform, which was very cool. Master Singers is the name of their group. And they did a whole program with music that had colors in their names. Oh, excuse me. Because the title was Sing the Rainbow. So it included like Purple Rain and Black Velvet and Brown Eyed Girl and a whole bunch of stuff. Of course, you know, under the rain, over the rainbow, and It's Not Easy Being Green, things like that. But overall, it was a lot of fun. So I did that, and then I came back. It was late. I had to be up super early the next morning. One thing about conventions when there's cops involved is they almost always start at 7 in the morning. So that means I had to be up and dressed and hair done and makeup done and then haul all of my books to the exhibit area before 7 a.m. So those were some long days. And of course they party late too. So if you go to the bar where if they're hanging out at the bar, you can expect to be there till 10, 11 o'clock at night. So it was a couple of exhausting days. So I came back, and I did fine on the trip. I was amazed at the hotel prices. The first night I stayed at a Comfort Inn, and it was $250 in the middle of nowhere. The elevator didn't work, so I had to carry my stuff up to the second floor. I mean, it was just insane. I wound up on the way home, because we always used to just drive until we found a hotel. We got tired, and then we'd find a hotel, and then we'd stay. And that was my plan going out. I wound up staying at a Super 8, which was super nasty, and that was $130 a night. So it was just like, but you have to pay a deposit up front. So since they already had my money, I went ahead and I stayed. But everything was fine until my last night. The hotel I stayed in, I got home and I was all covered in red bumps. Now, I always check for bed bugs, so it was probably fleas, which is just as bad. So I sprayed everything down with flea spray. And I learned something. So this is the bed wedge that I carry with me when I drive because it lets me sleep a whole lot better. And I'm going to see if you can see this on this other camera. Let me switch. So I sprayed everything, and then I set this to dry. And let's see if you can see here. Can you see that light brown stuff here? This is the varnish off the floor in my front hall. It pulled the varnish completely off the floor. This was stuck. So I have now learned that flea spray will take the varnish off your floor. Luckily for me, this edge is the edge that's up against the wall when I sleep. So while I am going to be getting out the tweezers and picking all of this off, whatever I get done, I get done. If it's not 100%, it doesn't really matter. It's not like I'm sleeping against the surface. But that was a bit of a surprise when I went to pick this up and it was stuck. So again, something new and exciting. Oh, hey, hi Donna, how you doing? I like the jaunty tilt too. Very cool. Yeah, like I said, I've never had a bucket hat. I've done straw hats and that kind of stuff, but I decided to do the go ahead and soak it before you're doing stuff hat. So that's what that is. So anyway, so now I have learned that handy little tidbit, which you probably will never need to know, but you now know. And then the handymen started today on the second round on my house, which is they had to power wash, and they're staining all of my fencing, my back deck. They're replacing screens. I'm having them do a whole bunch of that kind of stuff to just get us caught up. It's been a long time since we've done much maintenance on the house, so it was time. So it has been a bit on the crazy side. So because I spent 6 days like this out of 10, my hands still are pretty bad shape still. So I didn't get much of my handwork done. I got about 10 of the white arcs sewn, but my hands were just beat every day that I was driving. And even on the days that I wasn't, I was handing out books and doing things. Um, I didn't get much done on that project. So unlike usual, I don't have a whole lot to show. Um, and I have not had the mental capacity to start any big new projects for you to watch me on, other than the handwork, that being the grandmother's flower garden. So just like last time, I've been doing a little bit of sewing on items from my two-piece drawer. So over here, I have a square and a square drawer where I've pre-made the squares, a 9-patch drawer, flying geese drawer, half square triangles, another half square triangles, 4 patches, and then the bottom one were miscellaneous 2 pieces. So strip sets, that were only 2 wide, things like that. So what I've been doing, because it doesn't take as much hand strength, is I've been pairing those up and pinning them for sewing into 4 patches. Or if it's a strip set, I will cut them into pieces and make 4 patches out of them. And when I'm doing that, I am doing some basic math. So for example, on this one, when I saw how wide this piece was, I knew how wide to cut them apart. So sometimes I have bigger pieces, sometimes I have smaller, but I do know that this will make approximately a square when I'm done. So since when you measure from, hold on, let me do this, from here to here on this red piece, right, there's another 1/4 inch back here. So if this is 1.5 inches, then I'm going to cut 2 inches across, so that, I'm sorry, if this is 1.5, measured, I'll be doing 1 3/4 across, so that it's all going to work out right on the math. So there are a variety of sizes, because 4 patches can always be trimmed down to whatever size you need it to be. So that's what I've done. So some of these are bigger, some of them are smaller, some of them are triangles that were split so that they're shaped like this, and then they're split up the middle. So I added another one down here that'll make not a half square triangle, but it'll do the it's not a 1/4 square triangle. I'm trying to think of the word. I'm blanking on it. I'll show it to you. You'll see what it is. So I've sewn a few of these together, and I thought I would show you kind of where things are at the moment. So I'm going to switch to camera 3 and swing that around and then down. So you can see I've got a bunch more sewn here. These are all still attached. So when I'm taking them apart, I have a purple thing that stands up that has a razor blade in the top. That's my favorite way to take these apart. But you can take a simple seam ripper, just one of these cheap old ones, put it in something that'll hold it upright. In this case, this is a pen holder that I use over on the side of my machine with it normally has pens and pencils and scissors and that kind of stuff in one of these. I still have one over on the side. This is an extra. So you can just put the seam ripper there and then cut your threads like that. And since it's standing upright, it's a lot faster to do than getting a pair of scissors and finding the spot and cutting. I also have one of these. I got this during a Quilt Guild meeting. It was a door prize. And so it has razor blades on both sides. And so all you have to do is slide it up anywhere in between the two, and it will just cut the threads. So I thought you might like to see that, because it's a little bit easier than, like I said, grabbing the scissors and cutting everything and doing it that way. And I just realized just how ugly bad my sewing table is right now, because I have book stuff and I have presentation stuff. So I apologize for the mess. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead. All right, this one isn't cut yet. I mean, it isn't sewn yet. So I'm just going to separate these like this, which makes it really quick and easy. and then I will press some while we're here. But as I mentioned early in the time, it's probably going to be a little shorter than usual today. So I have learned a few things about my car on this long trip. It's the first one I took. I was about 6 hours in, and I started getting warning lights that my... Oh, you can't see it when I'm doing this. Let me move this so that at least you can see what my hands are doing. My adaptive speed cruise control wasn't working. And then it was talking about how my automatic braking wasn't working and how this wasn't working. And every single one of those said, see a dealer. So I pulled over in a rest area and I called the closest dealership, which was an hour away. And I said, hey, what do I do about this? I said, is there any safety things here? He said, probably not. Okay, we all like to hear probably when it comes to safety. I'm sure you can agree with me on that. So he said, but you know what? Because you're on this long trip, bring it on in. We'll take a look at it. Now, I just bought the car brand new in February, so I was not super thrilled, especially since the day before we had learned that for some reason I could not talk to people over my phone's systems. I could get my books on tape via Bluetooth. I can get some business calls via Bluetooth. But I couldn't use the phone's Bluetooth to actually answer a phone call. It sounded like static when people were talking, so a staticky version of the teacher from Charlie Brown. So I was like, okay. I figured out how I could answer the phone. If I answered it, the car would pick up, but then I could press the speaker button and it would move to the phone, and then I could yell at the phone. So I figured out how to at least do the trip. And then all of a sudden all the rest of this stuff is not working. So I'm starting to wonder, what am I going to do? Because I'm in the middle of nowhere, 6 hours into a 3-day trip. Am I going to be safe, or is the braking system going to be the next thing to go? So I stopped, and he warned me on the phone that it was probably going to be like 2 to 3 hours before they could even look at the car because they were completely booked up for the day, but he would get somebody to look at it and do some diagnostics. So I was an hour away, so that's the first hour, so that was nice. And then it took another 2 hours before they looked at the car. And then they came back and they said to me that, nope, the car is... there's nothing unsafe. I'm just turning you so you can see the ironing board because that's my next step. There was nothing unsafe. There was nothing I needed to worry about. And I could go on to Omaha just fine. So at least I felt better about that. The next time I started the car, all the amber lights were off. So that was good. And they never came back on. So I am going to have to still set an appointment with my dealership to go and see if we can figure out what the problem was in the first place. But I am glad to say that overall I was safe. I was going to stay safe, and I didn't have to worry on the trip. But it was a little scary because it was just out of nowhere. All right, why are you not working yet? You're just not hot enough yet. Okay. So anyway, so that led to an exciting part of the trip I hadn't planned on. But even in that case, even though it took the extra time, I was glad that I had that extra time built in. Luckily, it is a 3-day drive, but I had planned the 3.5, so the fact that I lost several hours didn't really hurt anything. And in fact, I still got done in the 3 days. I just went a little bit longer each of each of the days to help make up the time. So I felt a lot better when that was done. Again, though, I had just standing around and stuff. So my quilting stuff was all in the trunk of my car. So I was playing on my phone or watching a horrible group of television shows. I'm not even sure what they were. They weren't quite Dumb and Dumber, but they weren't much smarter than that. So I was glad when I could get back on the road. What I don't understand is when I left, it was 5 o'clock in the morning, so of course it's dark. But it was gray and gray and gray and gray, which always makes me sleepy, right? While I'm in the dealership, the sun is bright and shining and the birds are singing and everything's cheerful and happy. Within 5 minutes of getting in my car, it started to become overcast and it started to rain again. I was like, that's just not fair. In 3 days, each way on the road, I probably drove in sunlight for about a half a day total. The whole rest of the time, it was pouring rain. Or at least raining and overcast. In fact, my last night on the road, I went to Ruby Tuesdays for dinner because they have a salad bar, and that's what I wanted. So it was just sprinkling when I got there. And I looked out the window, and it was total gray downpour. I mean, it was just miserable. Lightning, thunder, the whole 9 yards. So I get done, I get in my car, and I go to a nail salon. Now, why did I have to go to a nail salon? Because all of my fingernails had the dip polish on it, and it came off on all of my nails. So I don't know why. The reason that I've been using the dip polish is because it's super thick and super strong. So when I'm like carrying luggage and that kind of stuff, I don't wind up with broken nails. But it just peeled and popped off, and I was miserable. So I went in and got my nails done, and the sun came out while I was getting them done, and it started to rain again when I got back in the car. But I at least got to see some sunshine, so that was nice. And because it was on my way home, I got to put the sparkles back on. For the last several conventions, I've been saying, okay, I have to look professional, and I'll do something that looks, professional. And you know what I've decided? I've decided that I'm a sparkle nail polish gal, and if they don't like it, they can stuff it. I'm going to have what I like on my hands when I do it. So that was my last professional looking nail polish job. But I wound up having to get it done because my nails were so thin from them sanding it down, the dip polish, that they were sharp and they just kept folding over. I knew I was going to lose them all. So I had the gel put on in this case, and then I will probably in October, when I don't have anything for a while, just go polish free and let them regrow and get nice and strong again. But yeah, I've decided it's sparkle from now on. All right, let's go back to this. Thanks, Judy. I think I will. Anyway, so at this point, my iron is finally hot, so I'm just going to go ahead, spin these seams, and press them. This is a different tablecloth than you've seen before. Not tablecloth, pillowcase. I've mentioned before that I use a pillowcase on top of this ironing board material that I have on this little table, because it's really nice that I can just go ahead and toss it in the wash, and it's ready to go. So I'm going to open this up. It helps if my glasses are on. I shouldn't need to have them on because I do this so much. I should be able to do this in my sleep, but there you go. All right, and now I'm going to just make sure everything is all nice and flat and laid out right. And then I will go ahead and press this. This is the largest of the 4 patches that I had. Now technically, should I have kept this 2 patch because it's larger separate and then done this 2-patch with something its size. Yeah, sure. But I decided that I didn't care enough. This will be a fine 4-patch and something. And if worse comes to worse, I can always cut it down really small, and then I'll have other 2-patches and other patches and things. So, alright, I'm just plopping that over to the side. So here I am. Here's my seam. Pop. Quick finger press here. Lay it down. Press. Quick and easy. That's the nice thing about doing these, is that you can go ahead when you are not really as mentally with it. Now, if I was downstairs on my big ironing board, I would leave this in place to cool. When I do move it over to the side, I hit it again real quick with the iron just to warm it up again and then let it cool. Hold on. And then let it cool in place here. So I'll do several of them. What brand of iron am I using? This one is a Sunbeam. It's an older iron. It doesn't say what its name is or anything. It says Intertech here, but I don't know if that means anything. It's a really cool color. I like it. It was free, which I like even better. I don't know if you can tell, because it looks like a bluer blue on here. Let me see if I can. It's actually, no, it's going to look more like a true blue here. It's actually more of an aqua color. So it's not translating on the screen very well. But it's still pretty. And so, you know, nothing wrong with that. So, now sometimes when I'm doing these, I'll lay out a couple at a time. Warm up number 1. Warm up number 2. Pop. Layout. Pop. Layout. So, I did get an email from one of you saying, well, if you're going to be doing all these 4-patches, what are you going to do with them? I don't know yet. I have a couple of designs that I'm looking at. This may be my sewing machine project. I have a couple of thoughts. One of my problems is not only is my 4-patch drawer getting pretty full, my half-square triangle drawers are getting pretty full too. So I don't know if I'm going to do something that combines them all, or if I will do 2 separate quilts, one with the half-square triangles and one with the 4-patches. We'll see when it's done, and we'll just move forward at that point. So it's kind of up in the air right now, but that's one reason why I like doing 4-patches and half-square triangles in advance, is I know I will be able to use them. Sooner or later, I will be able to use them. Even if I just do a very scrappy Lady to Lake or something like that, you know. If I'm doing something where it's pre-planned and I need a certain number of things, then it's a little bit more difficult to have that flexibility. But even then, I always overdo on the fabric that I purchase, and then if I make a few extra half-square triangles or whatever, just to make sure I have what I need, then any leftovers go into the drawer. Now, I do have, this is probably something else that we should talk about at some point. I have 2 drawers, or 3, 2 drawers? Yeah. I have 2 drawers of orphan blocks. And each drawer would probably do a full quilt, if not more than one. So one thing that I may do when I'm done with this 2-patch drawer that I'm doing all of this sewing and pinning for, one thing I've been considering doing is doing a orphan block quilt up here for you guys to see me as I do it, and adding my coping strips and all of that kind of stuff. But that takes more planning than I have had the mental bandwidth to do with the whole thing with Scott. So I may or may not be able to do that right away. That may wait till the end of the year or next year, simply because that takes planning and, you know, color theory and figuring out everything that you want to do in order to have it look right. All, you know, as if you planned it, or if you were as if you were doing a row by row or something, which this will not be. These are all just random things. Can you just take orphan blocks and do a random scrappy quilt? Sure, you can. But if you don't have enough balance to it, or things are in the wrong, for example, if one whole corner winds up mostly being orange, and then there's a couple of weird random oranges someplace else, you'll notice that. And so you want a quilt that looks like it's intentional. So I think that I may go ahead and do that. In which case, what I'll probably do is get them all pressed and put them up on the wall so you can see them all, and then we'll talk about the designs from there. If this is something that you'd like to watch me do on live, let me know, and that's something that we can add in. We might be able to do that the weeks that we're not doing the blocks of the month, like this one. Okay, so, or we can do it next year, kind of as a not as the annual quilt, because not everybody's going to have orphan blocks. A lot of people don't make extra ones, or they just put them on the backs of their quilts, and that's a great use for them, don't get me wrong. But if we try to make it like the annual quilt, that's going to leave some people behind. So I would say we could do that as an extra, a bonus quilt for the year. But that might be kind of fun. So let me know if you're interested, and I will go with that. A lot of those too have square triangles and 4 patches. Yep. Yeah, it's one of those things where, if it's 3 a.m. and I can't sleep, then it's something that I can sew and bring my heart rate down and my serotonin up and all of those things to make me be calmer and more relaxed. Or if I'm in a bad mood, I never ever sew a client's quilts when I'm in a bad mood, because it is a guarantee I will mess it up. So 4 patches, you can't mess up that bad. The worst comes to worst is you say, oh, I sewed that horribly, tear it out, re-sew it, it'll be fine. So, having the stock of them is not a big deal. Okay, so anyway, all I have left that I'm going to be working on right now is going to be working on these 4 patches. Some of them, like I said, are triangles. Let me see if I can find a triangle one. Okay. So in this case, hourglass quilt, hourglass block, that's the word I was looking for. So in this particular case, I had 2 of these kinds of triangles. And so I just lined them up. Now you can see that they're really wonky against each other. I did cut this line perpendicular to the center of the triangles. So I used the seam line, and then I cut so it would be perpendicular, so that when I sewed these together, they would line up in my middle here. Okay, let me see if you can. Got to get down where you can see the light, but close enough so you'd be able to tell. So I will have an hourglass block instead of a traditional 4-patch block like this. Okay, so if this is your first time, hourglass, because this looks like an hourglass, and then 4-patch. They're sewn exactly the same way. I twist the seams the same way. So when I open this up, I will just still pop these 2 apart. Do a quick finger press here from the other side. Lay it down. Press it flat. Now, I do keep these in a separate stack in my 4-patch drawer. Simply because it's a different kind of a 4-patch. And if I wanted to use them as like cornerstones or something like that, and I see what I have, then I can go. Now, if you actually, let's go back to the 4-patch. If you look at this, this is very uneven. Okay? I can trim this out to whatever finish size I need, just like I can trim the 4-patch here down to itty bitty if I wanted to, because as long as the center's together, you can make it any size. I'm not going to trim this at this point because I don't know what my finish size will be. Do I have a square here? I don't think I have a square handy. Nope. So I'm going to use this just as a real quick, because it says 2, 2.5, etc. So I would be able at a later date to trim this up across like this. Dun, dun, dun. And that would give me a 2-inch, if you can see where these edges are. But it could go down to 1. It could go down to 2.5 when I'm done, depending. So by stacking them together, I can see how many I have of what kind, and then decide when and how I want to use them. So hopefully that all makes sense. But I have these things to press. Some of them have wider pieces and narrower pieces. That's perfectly fine. I will, when I use them, I'm sure that it'll be cut smaller, and then I'll have this 2-patch left, in which case that can be made into a 4-patch with something else. But until I know, I'm just going to leave it. I'm just going to leave it. I used to actually cut them all down into 1/2 inch increments. So 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5. But I found that I would go back to some of the bigger sizes and have to cut them down again to get down to the smaller size that I wanted. So let's say I wanted a 2.5 inch block and I didn't have enough, then I would look at the 3s and the 3.5 and the 4 and the 4.5, and then I would trim them all down to the 2.5 that I needed. Well, that meant I had to cut them all twice. Once to get them down to the size I was saving them as, and once to get them down to the final size. And I decided it wasn't worth cutting them a second time. It just wasn't worth the time it takes to get it all lined up and to do that. I know it's only a few seconds, but it adds up over time. So by waiting, I can trim whatever size I want, and all I have to do is slap a ruler down onto the intersection to say, nope, too small, and poof, off it goes, poof, off it goes. And I don't have to think about it as much. So hopefully that'll all make sense. By the time I'm done with this, my 2-patch drawer should be pretty sparse, such that I'll have another probably 5 years before I need to do this exercise again. I never used to do it at all until the drawer got full, but a lot of times now I get to the end of the project and I go ahead and I just make the 4 patches right then. I'll just go ahead, cut them, and pin them, and then they wind up as leaders and enders, and then they get used, in something at that point. So there's fewer and fewer of them that are going into the drawer. That's very helpful. I also have a bunch of other strange stuff. So for example, I did some corner beams using the Deb Tucker rulers. So there's a central, on the square, there's a point that goes to the corner. You probably know the mountain shape where it's a triangle and then there's 2 triangles that get put on the sides to make it a square. The corner beam is a wedge basically, and then there's 2 corner pieces. And I have still all of these leftover pieces that were sides. So that's a lot. I've never sewn them together. I haven't figured out exactly what I want to do with them. But if I were to take a closer look at this, these should give me rectangles. So I could go ahead and make half rectangles, squares. We'll have square rectangles. I don't know what you would call them. They're basically the same thing as a half square triangle, except that it's on a rectangle on that long diagonal instead of being on a square. It's the only difference. So I can't decide what I want to do with these. I'm playing around with it. I might instead choose to make out of a simple color a bunch of the center pieces, because if I was doing it out of a strip, I could do, this wedge, then that wedge, then this wedge, then that wedge, and then pair it up with the side pieces that I have. So the centers might all be the same color, and then the outer wedges be a different color. I might be able to take these and do sort of a spinning circle that wouldn't exactly be like a Dresden plate, but that could be interesting. If I sewed these sides together, then I would have a bifurcated equilateral triangle, like I did for the star quilt, the little mini star quilt that I did. So that's an option. So I haven't cut these down yet because I keep thinking that's a lot of pre-cutting done. How can I take advantage of that and still use up the material? Because one of my things is I want to use up everything. This next year, starting in 2025, I am also going to be making a concerted effort to use up or finish all my projects. Now, I've done UFO contests. I have finished hundreds of projects. I have more than that. I probably have another 150 projects on my list to do. And some of those will get edited out, and some of them I'll do some more on and say no, and maybe they'll wind up in the orphan block quilt, who knows. But I do want to start taking a lot of my partial projects, things that I've learned in classes, something I just wanted to try. So for example, the pieces that I made for the mystery quilt last year, when I was trying to work it out, I've probably got 4 or 5 blocks there that are kind of cool, that aren't the mystery quilt blocks. They're other varieties that I might want to do something different with. So there's a lot of options out there, and so I want to play around with that a little bit and see what I come up with. But anyway, so that'll be for next time. If you have stuck this out, particularly if you're new, thank you. It's been a little weird. But we do have the block of the month that we're doing as our annual quilt. You can go to StashBlasterQuilts.com and go to the annual quilts tab and 2024, and you'll see the other 4 blocks, which I can show you actually if I just do this. Oh shoot. So those blue and yellow ones, that's number 1 through 4. So you can see the 2024 quilt that we're doing together right now. You can also get all of the 2023 quilt, which was done as a mystery quilt. So that will be another thing that's available to you from now until whenever. So my goal is to keep the annual quilt up there in perpetuity, so you can always go back to them and see. This year, I'm putting the live stream dates that correspond to that block on the instruction sheets. So that was a really great idea. Thank you again for that idea, Donna. But I have not gone back through and figured out all of the dates for the mystery quilt. If I do another one, I will be putting the dates on, but as of right now, I just don't have the time to go back through and do that. But you can kind of figure it out as you go. You'll only be off 1 or 2. And I tended to talk about the mystery quilts pretty early in each round. So you'd be able to go and go a little bit, and then you'll see whatever the mystery quilt is for that session. Excuse me. The first 15 minutes or so of every live stream is going to be basically dead air. The idea there is that it gives you a chance to get through the bathroom, get yourself something to drink, and then get ready to settle down and watch on TV or on your computer or whatever, so that you can be with us when I'm talking about stuff and ready to go. So just be prepared that we're always going to start at 7 the first and third Wednesday of the month, but it's going to say that I'm live 15 minutes in advance. So just so you build that in. But please like, subscribe. If you hit the bell, you'll get that reminder and notice that I'm up and running. Otherwise, you can always go back through and watch all the old live streams. There's not a lot of edited content on my website. I mean, on my YouTube, it's almost all live streams. So you won't be getting a lot that you'll see posting. That may change in the new year, depending on how things go with the books and everything else I'm trying to get done. But I'm not making any promises. I am promising the first and third Wednesday, being here whenever I can be, which is 99% of the time, live. And then from there, we'll worry about edited content later. So anyway, so the last 2 years of quilts are on there. Donna, I'm glad that you got caught up, but for anybody who hasn't done the mystery quilt, I just wanted them to know. But again, moving into the future, I do know to do that now. So, I'm always learning as you guys are doing things too. If you have any questions, you can email me at mail@stashblasterquilts.com, and you'll be able to send me an email with any question that you have. I'll be happy to answer it here like I did today. If it's a more personal question, because you can send me questions about just general organizing things, then I will respond to those directly. But if it's something I think might be general knowledge, general interest, then I'll do it here as well. So hopefully that covers everything. I will see you guys the first Wednesday of July, and we will have a new block of the month. So have a wonderful time. Thank you, by the way, all of you that have been sending me thoughts and prayers and good wishes and all of that good stuff. I can't tell you how much I really appreciate that from all of you. I try to be here for you, but I love the fact that you're all here for me too, and I cannot thank you sufficiently. So anyway, have a wonderful couple of weeks, and I will see you soon. Oh, and the block is posted. I double-checked that before we started this, so you can go and get the new block. Thanks. Bye-bye.